Our city is hiding a very big secret. People are completing real-world quests in exchange for tokens and experience. Like we're in a giant video game. But the quests are hiding a bigger secret. Magic is very, very real. And one of the many things I've learned is with great power comes even greater danger. Fortunately, I'm not one to back away from a challenge. But I've also learned that the bigger the goal, the more help you need. And my goal? It's a big one. What do you know about Atlantis? I know it's a parable told to philosophy students and that it never existed. Now that's where you're wrong. Because all parables contain a kernel of truth. Atlantis is very real. And we're going to bring it back from the depths. Blood of Atlantis #1, live on Kickstarter. Back today at bloodofatlantis.com.
All right, welcome to the show. My name is Chad Burdett, and we're here to talk about another Kickstarter project, Blood of Atlantis, a modern epic magical adventure. And joining me is John Auerbach. I hope I says. I'll let him correct me on his saying his name here in a second. But he's here to talk about his Kickstarter. It just ended, but he just informed me that there's a post 2 week thing where you can still order it, so that's good. So we'll find out about that feature and him. So let me bring him in and we'll chat. Hi, did I say your name right or wrong? How bad did I screw it up?
Not that bad. It's Auerbach.
Oh, okay.
On Auerbach.
Yeah, Auerbach.
It's a hard one. Don't worry about it.
Oh, welcome to the show. And thank
you for having me.
As I mentioned, your Kickstarter, I think you said it just wrapped this morning. Is that right?
Wrapped last night, 7 p.m.
Last night. Okay, 7 p.m. Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
So before we get chatting about that and, the feature where people can still jump in if they want to, tell us a little bit about yourself as your history with comics and as a reader and also as a creator.
Sure. My history as a reader goes back to when I was in 4th grade, and some of the kids in my class were talking about the upcoming death of Superman. And so I don't know that I actually I think that by the time I heard about it, I think Superman had already died. Spoiler. But I bought, that issue.
What?
And then, I bought that issue, and then I got really into following the rise of the Supermen, that happened right after with the 4 different Supermen. And at some point, and I thought, oh my God, these are going to be like worth a ton of money. I'm going to buy them. I'm going to read them. I think I read all the way through to when Superman eventually did return and, defeated, cyborg Superman. And then for some reason, I think, due to, how sometimes comics can be confusing, I fell off. I also remember buying, Claremont, Jim Lee's X-Men #1 when that came out in, I think, 92. And I was also confusing. I was like, how is this issue #1? Haven't the X-Men been around for a while? But I think I'd say when I was a kid, most of my comic readings were actually the Simpsons comics from Bongo Comics, because I was a big Simpsons watcher. That was most of my comic reading as a kid. I mean, I loved the X-Men, the animated series show, as most comic Marvel fans do my age. I didn't really come back to reading comics until, I'd say, 2015. So 2015, I'm a regular reader of Kotaku, and they had an article about Jonathan Hickman's Secret Wars. This was either right before or it was about to start, and so I read it and I said, who's this Jonathan Hickman writer? And like, this seems like a cool event. Where can I start? And I think I googled like Secret Wars reading order or something, and I actually came on to across a Comic Book Herald reading order, and he went into this whole reading order. It's like, well, if you want to know what's going on, you have to read Avengers and New Avengers. Mm-hmm. And I said, okay, I guess I could do that. And then he's like, if you really want to know what's going on, also it really picks up stuff that happened in, Hickman's Fantastic Four run. I was like, okay. And also some of his Ultimate stuff. And really all the stuff he's been writing. And I said, well, that's going to make my head spin. Let me just do Avengers, New Avengers. And I started reading those books in parallel. And again, I kind of fell off. I really like New Avengers, but for whatever reason, I was like, there's too much going on. I hadn't, read comics in, 10, 20 years. So I fell off again. And then I saw another article in 2019 about Jonathan Hickman coming back to do, and I had followed Jonathan Hickman, some of his other books. I had read a little bit of Black Monday Murders. And in 2019, I came across another article. Like, Jonathan Hickman is here to relaunch the X-Men. So fortuitous timing again. It was like a couple weeks before House of X. And so I picked up House of X #1, blown away, read Powers of 10 the next week, blown away, and then really, the House of X #2 issue was, on another level. And so that was kind of my sticking point. So I read through all of the House of X Powers of 10 that summer, started going to my local shop more, which was a couple blocks from my office. And so that's, 5 years later, I have 6 boxes of comics in my apartment. And my wife is always telling me, like, where are all these comics going to go? There's so many comics here. Can't you get rid of them?
Well, let me just give you a piece of advice from somebody who's been collecting comics since, late 80s or so.
Yeah.
If you buy a storage unit, you're still not going to be happy.
Yeah. I have them down I bought these nice, like, fabric boxes. So now a bunch of them are down in my basement storage unit. So it solved the problem for now, but I'm buying so many faster than I can read them. But, I guess from the X-Men, it kind of spiraled out slowly to, I remember, I think, so this was the fall 2019, winter 2020. It was in the lead up of 10 of Swords, and then, Empire. So that was like my first, like, oh my God, this is a cool, like, big event, which got, completely derailed by COVID. All the shops shut down. But coming out of Empire, Empire is like, I want to buy as many of these tie-in books as possible, read the whole thing. And that's kind of got a little, more introduction to the wider Marvel universe. And so then, my kind of weekly comic pull list is like slowly expanded to like most of the Marvel titles. And then, during like COVID, there was no, I had read, there was no more books coming out. So I asked a friend, like, what should I read? And he's like, oh, my friend recommends, like, he gave me a bunch of things, like, oh, Wicked and Divine. So I picked up Wicked and Divine and like devoured that in like a month. And so that's how I learned about Kieran Gillen. And, it's like slowly kind of being exposed to new writers, over time and following them. That's kind of, it's been the past 5 years I've been, a regular reader. It's been great.
So what kind of inspired you to write your own?
So I had been writing fiction for the past probably since I have boy-girl twins who are now 11. So shortly after they were born, I don't know, I kind of had the itch to like do something creative. So I was writing these short stories, doing these flash fiction prompts, and that grew into longer stuff and a book. So I wrote a couple of urban fantasy novels set in New York City. Those came out in 2019 and 2023, I think. And again, it comes back to Jonathan Hickman, because also in that spring of 2020, I saw an announcement about a master storytelling seminar that Jonathan Hickman was doing with Andy Schmidt at Comics Experience, on relaunching the X-Men. So I signed up more to just because I was loving reading the comics. I just wanted to hear about, the behind the scenes stuff on how he relaunched the X-Men. But it was all of the kind of, it went really into detail on like being a comic writer and the nuts and bolts. And Jonathan was showing his pitches from like Avengers and New Avengers, like all the way back to New Warriors. I came out of that seminar being like, wow, I think maybe this is something I also want to try. I could be a comic writer. Like I consider myself a pretty good storyteller from, writing fiction, and it's a different type of storytelling, but this is something I could, learn how to do also. So I just started listening to as many interviews with comic writers, artists, finding stuff online on how to write comics, buying some books on comic writing, and it's been a 3-4 year process, fits and starts, and eventually I landed on the idea of doing like a spin-off story from my book series starring one of the secondary characters who I had kind of maneuvered into her own separate plot line at the end of the second book, and I wasn't sure whether I was going to write, another book. And then I came up with the idea of doing a comic, because the dichotomy between writing books and writing comics, you can write a comic script probably in a fairly short amount of time if you're good, but it costs a lot of money to make.
Yeah.
On the flip side, I can write a book. Other than the cover for a book, I can put out an ebook pretty cheaply, but it takes me too long. It takes me a long time to write. So it's like, well, I have a lot of stories I want to tell in this kind of same story universe, and I can't really write 2 books at once. So I said, well, let me try to spin off, have this spin-off story. Let's see how that would look as a comic. And so I started working on that script last summer. And became Blood of Atlantis. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about. I mean, you've already mentioned some of the inspirations for the book, I guess.
Yeah.
Tell us about what's the first off, what's the elevator pitch? Second of all, who are the main characters, and what's it about?
So I pitch it as Indiana Jones in a modern day setting with a snarky female lead mixed with Dungeons and Dragons, with a dash of Gargoyles Avalon World Tour to throw in some more 90s nostalgia. Really, the world that the story takes place in is a world similar to ours, except there's an undercurrent of magic that exists in the world, and the way the magic works is it's like a natural resource. Like imagine magic was like a water or like an oil, and it just permeated throughout the entire planet. And people discovered it, hundreds, maybe thousands of years ago. But because it's a resource, it's limited. And in the present day, people who are in kind of the magic user society have used a lot of it up, and they're looking for a way to find the remnants of it. And so they created this very elaborate underground game, where they give out quests. Like a Dungeons and Dragon quest, or like a MMORPG quest, but in the real world, to like fetch with seemingly random items, or rare a particular plant or something, because magic could be in the ground, it could be in a plant, it could be in animals. And so there's this underground game that these people are being exposed to. They don't know why they're doing it, and it's kind of a filtering mechanism to find people, to have these people find the remaining sources of magic. And so that's kind of the background of the story of my book series. So the comic is about this quester and magic. I call it, it's referred to in the books as alchemy, because it's a bit of sciencey. There's not like hard rules like in like a Brandon Sanderson novel, but it's not so soft. But you have to combine and mix things to kind of create magical items, things that give you, enhanced abilities. So the comic is about this well-worn alchemist named Beatrice Stallard, who discovered the quests, 10 years before the start of the comic. And she kind of worked her way up the system and made some very powerful enemies with one of the magical organizations that exists in this world. And so she's had some prior adventures and reached a détente, and now she's looking for a new beginning. She's started this. She bought a coffee shop in downtown Manhattan and setting it up as a place to help new questers like she once was. But really, she's in the world of the comic. She's figured out that a lot of the myths and legends that everyone has read about have a kernel of truth. And so one of those myths that she read about that she discovers is very real is the lost city of Atlantis. So Blood of Atlantis is about Beatrice, and she's setting out to find the lost city. And so it's a story that starts in New York, and hopefully as we get as we get further on, we'll kind of spiral out into the larger world.
Mhm. So, do you have an idea for how many issue series that this let's call it an arc. I mean that, or
Yeah.
this one story that you're trying to tell.
Yeah.
Do you have a set plan for how many issues that you are going to want to make it?
Yeah. So one piece of comic writing advice that I've heard over and over again is when you start writing comics, don't start out deciding to write like your 100-issue magnum opus. But I happen to like very detailed stories with a lot of, that the narrative builds and lots of intricate threads. So I, cognizant of that advice, I mapped out maybe five issue arcs. But my more immediate goal right now is to get to complete the first 5-issue arc, and
Mhm.
if it continues to do well on Kickstarter and gain readers, and I can have enough. I can maneuver to keep it going. But my goal right now is to tell like a satisfying 5-issue arc, and
Sure.
get that collected in a trade, and see where it goes from there. Because I have this interconnected, these books, and so I could kind of weave people back and forth with characters as needed. So shorter term goal, 5 issues to start, and hopefully can continue after that.
So let's talk about the rest of the creative team.
Yeah.
Who's the artist, and how did you get connected with them?
Sure. Interior artist is Francine Delgado. She is a Costa Rican Canadian comic artist. She lives in Vancouver. So I met her actually at New York City Comic Con in 2021. I have been going to Comic Con for many, many years. So that year I was down in Artist Alley, and I had met some indie comic writers who I had met online. So I went over to their table to say hi, and say, I had, at that point I was, I went there looking to let me see if I could meet some artists. So I told them that, and they said, oh, this artist, Fran, a couple tables down from us, I know is looking for interior work.
Mhm.
She would love to do more interior work. So I went down, introduced myself to Fran, talked to her. I mean, I didn't have anything written or, close to being developed then, but I took her card, and I ended up doing a Kickstarter the next summer 2022, for the second book of my series. And for one of the stretch goals, I had the idea of I'm going to do a 5-page mini comic as one of the stretch goals. So to kind of get my feet wet in comic writing and make a comic, because they say, the way to get started in comics is to actually make a comic.
Yeah.
So I reached out to her that summer. I said, I'm doing this Kickstarter. This is a story idea. Here's a 5-page script. Would you be interested in doing it? And she said, yeah, absolutely. And so we connected on that. We funded the Kickstarter. We funded that stretch goal. So we put out that 5-page mini comic for that Kickstarter, and it was a great working experience. And so, as I got further along developing, the Blood of Atlantis, I thought, she did a great job. I loved how she, created, I loved what she did with the 5-page mini comic. So I reached out to her again in probably at the end of last summer. And she said she'd love to work on it. And, I finished up the script in the fall. We had maybe like a 2-hour Zoom where we went over the script together, made some more changes, and she got started on it this January. And the issue is my goal. So my goal for the Kickstarter was to only launch when the book was ready, because it's my first comic Kickstarter. Kickstarter overall has a good reputation. The creators have a good reputation of putting out stuff, but as a first-time comic campaign, I wanted to have the issue done before the campaign starts, so I could fulfill it quickly and get people on board. So we finished art, I think, sometime in May, and the campaign ran this month, and I'm hoping to turn it around and get it to the printer within a couple of weeks.
Nice. So kind of continuing on the whole Kickstarter thing,
Yeah.
This is the first time that you've kickstarted your books before.
Yeah.
Um, was there anything different? Did you notice anything different from kickstarting your book to the comic? Do you know if you got a lot of people who followed your, books over to the comic book campaign?
Yeah. So comics on Kickstarter, I think, uh, is a much more mature category than the fiction. I think it's a lot more comics projects have been launched compared to fiction. Fiction is kind of having its own renaissance now. There's a lot. When I did my first fiction campaign in January 2021, there weren't a lot of authors doing Kickstarters for fiction, like indie authors doing the fiction books. They were, launching on Amazon, just doing an ebook. People really didn't want to do a physical, uh, a paperback or a hardcover because you'd have to do print on demand and it's expensive. And Amazon selling cheaper books from traditional publishers. That was so, but I ended up doing a good experience, and since in the last 3 years has been more of an explosion of fiction. So there's now more fiction campaigns running. In terms of the differences between fiction and comics, I'd say it was I happen to back a lot of comic campaigns, so I see just because I like supporting indie writers. There's a lot of great comics on Kickstarter, and so I've gotten to know kind of all the different indie creators on Kickstarter over the past several years.
Mhm.
The only real difference, I'd say, I guess it's a different pool of readers, and I had kind of my existing readers who had backed my Kickstarter, and we have through Kickstarter and through other platforms you can kind of track past backers, and I think I have probably had 20% of my past fiction backers back this campaign, which is great, but it showed me that there's still kind of different audiences, different readerships. A lot of people who read fantasy books also read comics and vice versa, but it's not a complete overlap. So I was able to reach new readers. I think there are a lot more people looking for new comics on Kickstarter than are looking for fiction books, fantasy books in particular. There's a lot of people doing special editions of fantasy books, of existing books. And so I think there's more, it's growing, but I think there's more readers out there, comic readers on Kickstarter looking for new comics to read than maybe necessarily fiction readers, just from the types of fiction and campaigns that are popular right now.
Okay, that's fair. And
Yeah.
so, no, I'm always curious because I always, when I talk to people about their projects,
Yeah.
everybody seems to have a different experience, and
Yeah.
you having two very successful, you know, prior Kickstarters for your books. I was just curious to if you noticed, the follow over with that.
Yeah. I'd say, overall Kickstarter, I find it's a great platform because, as I said, a lot of indie authors just do ebooks.
Mhm.
And it's very hard to get someone to buy, if you're advertising on Amazon it's hard to get someone to buy a $5 ebook, let alone like a $25 paperback or a $35 hardcover. On Kickstarter, every campaign I've had people come in who have never heard of me before, who, come across the campaign through they see it on Kickstarter or elsewhere, and they're buying, a $25, $35 book, or, the variant cover, or like all the covers. And it's the backers on there are looking to support cool, creative projects. So it's a different type of, I don't want to say customer, because it's a different kind of person who loves, who's browsing on Kickstarter. And I love kind of launching my creative project on there because it's just such it's a vibrant creator community, and it's a vibrant kind of backer community.
Nice. Um, without any, spoilers, can you kind
Yeah.
of tease what you have coming up, you know, for the next book of your series?
Sure. So the first issue ends on a little bit of a cliffhanger, as most first issues do. So the first issue, our character Beatrice goes on a quest to get a cutting of the corpse flower at the Brooklyn Botanical Garden. I don't know if you've seen what those look like. It's like this big giant flower that smells.
Mhm.
So she meets up with these newbie questers, and they of course run into some issues, which I won't say more of getting the corpse flower cutting, and following kind of the end of that, we learned something about Beatrice that maybe we weren't expecting, and so the second issue is going to kind of expand on her. There's on her search. The next, it's not going to be like, oh, we're going to find Atlantis in like issue 3.
Yeah.
But she's looking for these different pieces of the puzzle. She's come across this reference to the 13 pillars of Atlantis, and so issue 1 is kind of tied into looking for more information about one of those pillars. So so issue 2 is kind of beginning the search for the next pillar, and with this kind of antagonist out there that we'll see how that interplay, and they'll link clearly to a climax at the end of the the 5-issue arc.
Awesome. So I noticed from your profile picture on Kickstarter that you were probably at Disney World recently. Are you a Star Wars fan?
Yes, yeah. So my profile picture is me next to Chewbacca. I'm a big Star Wars fan. Also, I think that was from a trip where right before Galaxy's Edge opened, and they had this kind of character meet and greet. But I went to Galaxy's Edge a couple of years ago. And absolutely loved it. I thought the Smuggler's Run and Rise of the Resistance rides were like on another level. Such a great addition kind of to the Star Wars world to have that park. And I've gone to the one in Orlando and the one in California, and I'm with my young kids and we got a lot to do. But like, I always feel like, I just want to walk around here for like 3 hours and just see kind of what they've set up, because they did a great job making it immersive.
And not to get off too far, but have you been watching The Acolyte?
I have not. The last couple of years, I've gotten very behind on my TV watching, and I find if I don't watch week in, week out of like a show, even if it's releasing episodically, I get so far behind. So I'm behind on all my Star Wars shows. But I really want, I want to watch it. I'll try to pick it up this summer, but I want to go back, and I've watched like the first 3 episodes of Andor, which everyone says is phenomenal. And so I kind of want to work my way back through all of those shows.
Andor is great. I love it.
Yeah.
And I like The Acolyte too. I mean, it's getting a lot of hate, but
I think it's disappointing, but people have strong opinions about Star Wars, obviously, but I like that it's exploring a different era that we've been exposed to. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah. Well, is there anything else that you wanted to maybe say about this campaign, or kind of let people, pitch to people so they can, get in these, as the last 2 weeks. Now, is that you know exactly how that works with rewards? Are there certain rewards that are available or something?
Yeah, so Kickstarter recently rolled out this late pledges feature, and what you could do is set how many rewards you could set a late pledge period, and during that period you can offer a limited amount of rewards, or you could offer all of them if you want. And what people have been doing is really setting it for an extra 2 weeks with a limited subset of pledges while Kickstarter is collecting its money from the campaign. So right now I have it set for, if you go to bloodofatlantis.com, that will take you to the Kickstarter page, and you can get a digital copy of the issue, a digital deluxe copy, which is, the full issue. But then I have a breakdown of, I'm going to put it'll go from script to inks to colors to final page, so you can kind of see the progression. And I have the regular cover A, and a swag tier, which has some trading cards and stickers, and then a tier where you can get all 4 covers. You're able to get some really great variant covers from Serge Acuna, who does a lot of DC covers, and Elizabeth Torque, I love. She's doing a lot of Marvel covers. She did this. She's done a lot of Ultimate Spider-Man variants, which are very fun. So she did one. We did. So I guess one of the other things I want to mention about this year is one of my other big kind of influences growing up was point and click adventure games. I love playing like the LucasArts, adventure games like Monkey Island. And one of them that was one of my favorites was Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis. So that I played that game probably 3 or 4 times. So that's kind of why this comic is, partly an homage to that game and Indiana Jones, like, pulp adventure, looking for like hidden mythological and archaeological like objects. So we lean into on the Elizabeth Torque variant cover. It's a homage cover to Raiders of the Lost Ark. And so I styled this series as kind of a modern day Indiana Jones, looking for lost artifacts and looking for the lost city. But yeah, so you can go to bloodofatlantis.com for the next 2 weeks and pledge for the campaign. Love to have you.
All right. Well, as we kind of wrap up here, if you want to, kind of tell people where they can find you on social media or find your other, stuff and get your other stuff, then that, now's your opportunity to, do that.
Yeah. You can find more about my book series at johnauerbach.com. And I'm on Twitter /X as JAAUERBACH, or you could probably search, my name and I'll come up. And I'm on Instagram also as JAAUERBACH_author. And those are the 2 kind of social media platforms that I'm typically on and sharing, artwork and talking to other creators. So yeah, find me on there and visit at johnauerbach.com.
All right. Well, I want to thank you for taking the time. And again, I apologize that we didn't get this done sooner. But I'm glad there's that late backer option, which hopefully people will take advantage of. Yeah, when you're ready to get doing to release the issue number 2, let's kind of come back and we'll see how this one ended, wrapped up, and what you have in store for us with the next one.
Sounds good. Thank you so much for having me on, Chad. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you, and have a great day. And everyone should be sure to check out Comic Watch on our site every Saturday at noon. Is when I put together and post the Crowdfunder Corner, and where we kind of showcase different campaigns that are going on that we feel deserve a little more attention that they might not be getting and regularly. So, and that's I think I forget how I found out about yours. I think I maybe just found it on Kickstarter as I was going through, and that looks interesting, and I'm going to include it. So.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. Well, you have a good day, and
right.
It was great chatting.
Yeah, great chatting.
Bye.